What is going on, guys? This is Crozen, and welcome back to Baldur's Gate 3 with my Pure Bladesinger Shadowblade control build. So the Bladesinger class to me is basically like an improved version of the Swordsbard CC build, where you're going to be able to still CC enemies just as good as a Swordsbard, but you're also going to have Shadowblade, you're going to have the Resonant Stone, you're going to be able to just deal some crazy damage, and you're still going to get all of the good benefits of being a wizard, like Counterspell and Globe of Invulnerability, and it's a very fun subclass to go all the way to level 12 with, so let's take a look at the build. So beginning with the class and abilities, we're obviously going to be starting as a wizard here, and for the 3 cantrips, you want to make sure that you definitely pick up Booming Blade. This is the new OP cantrip of patch 8, so we're going to be utilizing this a lot, as well as Friends and Minor Illusion. For the 6 spells, don't worry too much about a lot of these. Remember that you can scribe scrolls being a wizard, but you do want to make sure that you pick up Shield, as well as Magic Missile, and you're probably going to be utilizing Mage Armor a lot early on in the game, and then also Long Strider, Find Familiar, and Witch Bolt. For the ability points, I'm going to assume that everyone is going to get the Hag's Hair, so we're going to start with 17 Intelligence, and that'll get to 18 with the Hag's Hair, 16 Dexterity for nice initiative and armor class, 14 Constitution, and then from there I just lowered Strength down to 8, Wisdom to 8, and Charisma to 10. Now you can swap out Wisdom and Charisma here, so you can go for 10 Wisdom, 8 Charisma if you really wanted to. However, I don't really like to lower my Charisma, especially being the main character. For the skill proficiencies, you can pick whatever you want here. I just go with Investigation and Insight. Most of these aren't going to be that useful, other than maybe perhaps Insight. Next up, we can go through our level path and also obtain our feats. So at level 2, make sure you go ahead and select the Bladesinging subclass, and for the 2 spells, I like to go with Chromatic Orb for a nice damaging spell early on, and then also Grease for good CC. Just keep in mind that early on in this game, until you get to level 6, you're going to be mostly a spellcaster, so you're going to cast damaging spells as well as CC spells, because Bladesinging doesn't really have too much going for it melee-wise until we get that extra attack at level 6. So with that in mind, for the Bladesinger's weapon, this really isn't going to matter too much, just pick whatever you want here. At level 3, we get 2 additional spells. The main spells that you want to select here are going to be Web, as this makes for an excellent crowd control spell early on in the game. And then also go ahead and select Shadowblade. Shadowblade is going to be the main weapon that we're going to use for most of this game. And even though we're not really going to be much of a melee class right now until level 6, I don't believe there's a scroll for Shadowblade, whereas most of these other spells you can just get them through scrolls, so make sure that you pick up Shadowblade. At level 4 we get a feat and then also a cantrip and 2 spells. So for the cantrip, I like to go ahead and select Ray of Frost here as just a nice damaging cantrip that can slow enemies down. For the 2 spells, it's really not going to matter too much here because you can scribe most of these. However, Misty Step is very good, and Hold Person is going to be a staple for our build later on in the game. As far as the feat, I highly recommend just going with ability improvement here and raising up your intelligence, since we're mostly a caster right now anyway, and pretty soon you're going to be able to get this to 20 intelligence with the Hag's Hair. Level 5 gets us 2 new spells, and there's 2 spells that are going to be very significant for our build. One of those being Counterspell, and you cannot learn this through a scroll, so make sure that you get this now. The other one is going to be Hypnotic Pattern. This is an excellent CC spell that you're going to be using a lot, especially if there are a lot of enemies that are clustered together. So now that we're level 6, we do get our extra attack, so now you can start transitioning from being a ranged caster to more of a melee character and utilizing that extra attack to attack twice. For the 2 spells, at this point, you're probably going to get a lot of these through scrolls, so I like to get Sleet Storm here and then also Haste if I don't already have it, as both of these are excellent level 3 spells. At level 7, we unlock level 4 spells, and one spell that you can utilize with this build will be Fire Shield, especially since you're going to be in melee range. Now you also can select Fireball here if you don't already have it through a scroll. So now that we hit level 8, we do get 2 additional spells as well as our second feat. For this feat, you want to go ahead and select Savage Attacker. This is going to really help out your Shadowblade attacks, and roughly around this level we will start to get the Resonant Stone, and when we do get that, our damage is really going to take off, and that's where Savage Attacker is really going to help because it's going to give you advantage on your damage rolls. As far as the 2 spells, you can go ahead and select anything that you want here. We already have the main spells for the build, so I just go with Ice Storm, and then I also select Fear, as this is an illusion spell and this can be useful once we get into Act 3. At level 9, we do unlock level 5 spells, and there's going to be 2 level 5 spells that are going to be so useful for this build. Well, really just one, but I always like to select Conjure Elemental. That's one of my favorite spells in this game. Hold Monster is going to be so useful for paralyzing those creatures that you cannot target with Hold Person. At level 10, we do unlock our last subclass feature with Song of Defense, and Song of Defense really isn't that useful in most cases. However, against those very high damaging bosses, that's when you can use this and expend a spell slot and subtract 5 damage per every spell slot. We also get one more cantrip, and for this cantrip I select Shocking Grasp, as this does have its uses in Act 3. And then for the 2 additional spells, we can go ahead and select anything that we want here. We already have all the main spells that we need for the build. So at this point, I just like selecting summons. I just go for Conjure Minor Elemental and Animate Dead if I don't already have them through a scroll. At level 11, we unlock level 6 spells, and there's going to be one spell that's pretty much a cheat code, and that's going to be Globe of Invulnerability. So you want to make sure that you do pick that one up. From there, you can also select Chain Lightning, and this can be useful, especially if you have another party member that can add Wet to the enemies. And finally, at level 12, we get our last 2 spells, as well as our last feat. For the 2 spells, I like going with Create Undead and then also Dominate Person, as this is an enchantment spell and we'll be able to use this as a bonus action in Act 3. And then for our final feat, you have a couple of different options, and I'll basically give you 3 options that work very well. For one, you can go with Alert, and that means that in Act 3 you're going to be able to go first in every scenario, and that's going to be very useful because you're going to be able to crowd control everything before they can attack. You also can go for a safe route and go for ability improvement and just raise up your dexterity to 18, which is what I normally do. The last option is more of an experimental option, and that goes with Great Weapon Master. Now, Great Weapon Master isn't going to be useful for the additional 10 damage because we're not two-handing any weapons. However, you're still going to get that bonus action that you can use with Shadow Blade, and that works out very well for those cases where you're not going to be CCing an enemy on the first turn, or you're going to be on the second turn utilizing that extra bonus action from Great Weapon Master. So it can be an interesting selection that will give you some extra damage per round, especially on that second round if you do CC enemies in the first round. Next up, we can go over the equipment, and we're going to start out with Helmet of Arcane Acuity. This is going to be one of the main pieces that we're going to make most of our builds centered around because we gain Arcane Acuity stacks every time we attack with a melee weapon. So that means we're going to be raising our spell difficulty class, which means that enemies will not be able to succeed versus a lot of our CC spells. So this is very important that you get this as early as you can in Act 2. Cloak of the Weave is going to be useful for our spell save difficulty class and spell attack rolls. However, you can use Cloak of Protection before you get Cloak of the Weave in Act 3. As far as the armor set, we're going to go with Armor of Landfall that you get in Act 3. The main benefit here is advantage on Constitution saving throws, which is going to be so useful for us. However, we also will gain a +1 to spell save difficulty class. Now, as far as alternatives, you can go for anything that's going to give you spell save difficulty class or initiative. So there's going to be a lot of light armor pieces out there that are going to give you initiative. You can settle for those, or any of the robes that'll give you spell save difficulty class. Just make sure that you use mage armor if you are going that route before you get Helmet of Arcane Acuity. Our main gloves are going to be Gauntlets of Hill Giant Strength. You want to make sure that you rush for these as soon as you get into Act 3. Now, prior to that, what you can use is Gloves of Dexterity that you get in Act 1, and this will basically not only give you 18 Dexterity for the initiative, but you're also going to get good armor class, and you're going to get a +1 to attack, which is basically like 20 dex. So this is going to be very useful, especially early on in the game, for your damage and your attack rolls with Shadow Blade. The boots are pretty simple here. We're just going to go with Evasive Shoes for armor class. As far as the necklaces, I like to go with Amulet of the Devout in Act 3. This is another one of those that's going to give us spell save difficulty class. You can settle for Broodmother's Revenge that you get in Act 1, and this can coat your Shadow Blade and poison damage anytime you heal, and since we do have that ability with our charges whenever we attack with Bladesinger, we can actually use this and get poison damage on that second turn. For the rings, a very important ring is going to be Ring of Arcane Synergy that you get in Act 1. This is going to allow you to add your proficiency bonus after you use your Booming Blade. So this was one of those rings that really wasn't that good prior to patch 8, but now that we have Booming Blade, we can stack Ring of Arcane Synergy and add that to our build. The second ring will be Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, and this will start to work once you get into Act 3, where you'll be able to use all of your CC spells as a bonus action right after you attack with Booming Blade. Now for the weapons, our main hand weapon is going to be Shadow Blade, and then the offhand weapon, I like to go with Rhapsody. This has some amazing synergy with our Bladesinging subclass. However, early game you can actually settle for Knife of the Undermountain King, and that's going to work out just fine. For the bow, I like to go with Hail Rider Longbow for the +3 bonus to initiative, and that's going to stack very well with our 18 dexterity, where we're going to be starting first nearly every time. So if you do pick up Alert, you actually can go with Vicious Shortbow since you're going to be starting first anyway, and you're just going to get an additional 7 damage every time you activate a crit, which is going to be very frequently. And finally, a very important part to this build is going to be the Resonance Stone that you get at the end of Act 2, as this is going to double all of your psychic damage because all the enemies are going to be vulnerable to psychic. So make sure that you pick this up, and that's really where your damage is going to start to go over the roof. And it's going to be very nice when you get into Act 3. So for the next half of this video, we can go over the combat showcase for the pure Bladesinger build, so make sure that you stick around so that way you can see the damage and CC capabilities that this build can do by being just a pure subclass in Bladesinger. So to start out, I do have Elixir of Bloodlust and Haste activated. I do recommend both of those, as more attacks is going to be very significant because we're going to be a very high damage dealing class with that psychic damage with Resonance Stone and Shadow Blade. So you always want to start out first by going into your Blade Song. This is going to activate not only your +4 armor class, but you're also going to get Blade Song Climax, which means that you can heal not only yourself but your allies whenever you release those charges. And you can do that anytime that you want. However, more charges means that you're going to get more out of the healing, so you want to make sure that you wait until you attack. And yeah, I'll show more of that in round 2. So to begin, you always want to start out with Booming Blade, as Booming Blade will not only activate your Arcane Acuity, but also your Arcane Synergy from the ring. So that's going to be very significant. So I'm just going to go for this enemy since I have advantage on him. And we might as well go ahead and use our Luck of the Far Realms. And so now, as you can see, we do have 4 Arcane Acuity and 2 Arcane Synergy. So at this point, we can either do another attack, or we can go into one of our bonus actions and use something like Hold Person, since we do have Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. So Hold Person will work out very well for this particular setup. However, if these were not humans, then you can go for Hold Monster, or you can go for Hypnotic Pattern. All 3 of these work out very well. So I'm just going to go with Hold Person, and I might as well just upcast this to a level 5. That way I can just use this on basically all of these enemies here, other than this guy, but he only has like 36 health, so we'll be able to take care of him pretty easily. So at this point, now we can just keep on going with our main hand attack. So let's take that enemy out, then we can move over here. Now we can activate our Booming Blade again. So I'm just going to go for this one since he has more health. Now we could just go back into our regular attack here, and then we can go into, I'll just use a regular attack on this guy since he only has 36 health. And then we'll go Booming Blade over on this guy. So now that we're in round 2, we actually can do something different with our bonus action. We can go into our Blade Song Climax and spend all of those Blade Song healing charges that we got from attacking enemies. So this is a nice little AoE heal that we can do not only on ourselves but our allies, and the healing is pretty decent for a bonus action. The problem with it though is that it removes your Blade Song, and I really don't understand that because it's really not that overpowered to remove the Blade Song, but that's just the way this subclass works. So from here on out, all we can do is just go into a Booming Blade and finish the fight. So thank you guys for watching this till the end, and I hope you enjoyed my pure Bladesinger build for patch 8 in Baldur's Gate 3. And this is probably one of the stronger subclasses that you can take all the way to level 12 in patch 8. I had a lot of fun with this build, and yeah, let me know if you guys want to see any more builds, and I will see you in the next video.